all of you. We're happy you've joined us. My name is Janet Topolsky, and I'm the director of the Aspen Institute Community Strategies Group. And I want to let you know this is the second in a series of monthly Rural Family Economic Success webinars that are going to be in process during 2009. And these webinars are open to alumni of Rural Family Economic Success Peer Learning Institute, site visits, conference sessions, and they're also open to anyone you want to forward this information to. So when you get an announcement of a RuFES webinar, you know, every once in a while when we send these announcements out, people will email us and say, oh, can we let these other people know about it? Can we invite other people? And the answer is a resounding yes. So if there's anyone you ever want to join one of these webinars, you don't have to ask permission or forgiveness. Just let them know about it and forward the announcement. Each webinar is being recorded, and so if at some point we have one that you want to join in on but you can't make it, we will be sending follow-up email about where you can listen to the webinar and watch it after the fact during what I know everybody has is copious free time to do such things. However, we actually did get a request this week if someone could run one of the webinars on their public access TV channel, the last one we did. So apparently someone wants to watch it after the fact, and we're happy about that. We've got companion material that's going to be emailed to you after the webinar. It will also be available on a website. So in the near future, you'll find not just this webinar link, but also a resource list on the stimulus and budget websites with current information, and a one-pager on all the RuFES-related tax credits, and many other wonderful things. Today's topic, as I've said, is, but let me say it again, is clear and present opportunities in the American Resource and Recovery Act, which is also known or commonly referred to as the stimulus package. And these are opportunities that represent potential resources you can use to help hard-working rural families get ahead. And I'll mention this in just a minute, but the RuFES, Rural Family Economic Success, which we call RuFES, that framework is built around three major overarching goals: earn it, keep it, and grow it. And so we're going to highlight what we think are one or two clear and present opportunities related to each of earn it, keep it, and grow it. Now, there are many opportunities in the stimulus package that can help your RuFES efforts. We're trying to highlight a few that we think are either very timely at this point or just are really critical. There are a few meta opportunities that actually go across earn it, keep it, and grow it, and we're going to talk about a few of those in this webinar as well. And we call those things quilted things that help you quilt your earn it, keep it, and grow it efforts together. We ask you to stay tuned because we'll do more webinars. As I said, we're just trying to bring you things that we think are current and timely right now or really critical for you to pay attention to at this point. There are plenty of other opportunities, and we likely will have ensuing webinars. How much fun could that be? Focused on the FY 2009 budget, FY 2010 budget, and possibly other things in the stimulus package. Also, we ask you, if you want to stay on top of this, to pay attention to the RuFES action alerts that we've been sending regularly and will continue to send, where we're really trying to alert you to lots of opportunities for RuFES. And one of those opportunities will be federal, late-breaking federal program opportunity news. So keep in touch with those, and you'll keep in touch with what the stimulus and the federal budget can do for RuFES. So notes on how to participate in a webinar. Everyone who's participating right now, with the exception of the presenters, is on mute. The webinar honcho has you on mute for now, and the reason we do this is not to silence you, because we love to hear from you, as you well know, but it minimizes the barking dogs, the annoying music, and your swine flu sneezes. So not everyone has to hear them at this point. But during the webinar, if you have any clarifying questions, there's a little questions box in your webinar control panel. And if you go to that questions box, you will, during the presentation, if there's something one of the presenters says that you need clarified, or you think it's just plain wrong and you want to make sure it's what we're saying is right, which could be the case, simply type a question in there. I will see it, and if it's a clarifying question, I'll get it. I'll enter the conversation at the right time to pose it to the presenter. likewise, later on you may have some cosmic questions that are more really trying to delve into something that one of the presenters said. After each major segment of the agenda, after the Earn It segment, the Keep It, and the Grow It segment, and then at the end of the call, we'll have time for questions like that. And if you have a cosmic question, you have two options. One, you can raise your hand. There's a little hand icon in your control panel. It looks like a little hand in the middle of a circle. And if you click on that, you'll be able to type in a question, and I will see it and try to, I will pose the question for you at the right time. Or what I can also do, I'm sorry, if you raise your hand, I got that wrong. If you raise your hand, I will see that, and I will unmute you, and you will be able to ask your question live. If indeed you don't want to ask your question live, you type your question in the questions box, and I'll see it, and I will pose the question for you. Sorry, even I get mixed up with this techno stuff sometimes. Now, if you have technical problems, speaking of which, use the questions box, and Elsa Noterman of our staff will see it and help you. If it's really a bad problem, email Nelsa at this email address, or call her at 202-736-5833. She is indeed standing by. So I want to just mention again that everything we do in these webinars is built around the RuFES framework, and in all of our RuFES work, the Rural Family Economic Success Framework, which is built around three major goals. How can you help families earn more? How can you help families keep more of what they earn? And how can you help hard-working rural families grow what they keep into assets over time? The RuFES framework is really, as the Annie A. Casey Foundation, which is really sponsored all of the development of this work, as they say, it's a two-generation approach. You're not going to solve some of the difficulties that low-income and poor rural families have in one generation necessarily, but if you steadily keep working on the RuFES framework, helping families earn it, keep it, and grow it over several generations, we can make a big difference. The primary focus goals, we have a lot of goals under Earn It, Keep It, and Grow It, and these goals are family-focused goals that are really what we're trying to make change for rural families. So in this webinar, the programs we're going to talk about touch a whole range of the Earn It goals that are sort of listed here on this page. One of the things that we'll also make available on the website afterwards and email to you is the full list of the Earn It goals. The Keep It goals we're focusing on are related to establishing financial health and protecting income and decreasing costs, so we'll hear some of the stimulus opportunities related to these goals. And the Grow It goals we're going to focus on mostly in this particular call are ones related to purchasing homes and improving opportunities in K-12 schooling for children of hardworking rural families. And that's really going to be our focus during this call. Today's presenters is an all-star studded lineup, if I do say so myself. John Molinaro, our Associate Director here at the Aspen Institute Community Strategies Group, who is well known to any of you who have been at a RuFES peer learning activity. Kim Finney, you notice here, is looking a little green because we didn't get her photo in time, so she asked us please to insert a photo of Yoda in the stead of her photo. So Kim Finney, who is Director of Rural and Tribal Development at our colleague organization YouthBuild USA. Dwayne Yoder, who is a RuFES All-Star Action Hero, President of the Garrett County Community Action in Maryland, in rural Maryland. Rachel Tompkins, soon not to be, but still currently President of the Rural School and Community Trust, who also is a sort of a RuFES Action Hero for life. Renee Bryce Laporte of our staff, Senior Associate. And finally, Jason Gray, who's a consultant formerly of the Southern Rural Development Initiative and who is actually somewhat of a stimulus package guru when it comes to where are the dollars and which dollars are going where in America. So that's who you're going to be hearing from. And this is who I am, Janet Topolsky. And so we're going to go straight on to our first segment. And that segment is going to be about navigating the stimulus package. And we're going to start with John Molinaro. And John is going to start with simply an overview of the Act. So, John, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Janet. And I'd also like to thank Jason Gray, who is going to be on the call later, and Brian Dabson from RuPES for helping to assemble the information that I'll be presenting here. I'm going to be talking about the basic geography of the Stimulus Act and just a little bit of a preview on the fiscal year 2010 budget. So next slide, please. Why consider federal resources in the context of rural family economic success? Well, the federal programs and tax credits are truly the largest single source of support for helping low-income families earn it, keep it, and grow it. They outstrip state resources. They certainly outstrip whatever local charities and foundations can do. And so given the fact that there's a large amount of new money in the federal pipeline, it just makes sense to think about this in terms of earn it, keep it, and grow it. You really need to understand where these resources are if you're going to put them to work for families. This is very much a huge one-time opportunity. Because we're in a fairly large recession, Congress and the President have put together a very large stimulus package, but it's one time, and in fact, it's adding enough to the federal deficit that in all likelihood, there are going to be severe budget restrictions going forward. So now is really the time to tackle these resources, because if you don't, the odds are you're going to lose out in the long term. This is also very much a deluge. It's coming fast, it's coming furious, and just like a heavy rain on a rocky terrain, it's just going to run off if you don't have structures in place to catch it. And this is really an area where preparation, leadership, and leverage are critical. This is a perfect place for those RuFES action teams so many of you have been part of to get involved and make a difference in the community. The intended outcomes of the Recovery Act are really primarily around building our economy and try to keep the economy from sinking further and to put the money to work to build the economy now and into the future. So there's a lot of money in it to preserve and create jobs and promote the economic recovery. There's money in it to assist those most impacted by the recession. A lot of the money that is going into investments is really focused on increasing long-term economic efficiency by doing things like spurring technological advances or investing in assets like transportation, environmental protection, other infrastructure that's going to provide a long-term benefit for a one-time investment. There's also a significant chunk here to stabilize state and local governments. And the reason for this is because Congress understood that states have to balance their budget every year. If the recession was impacting their tax receipts, and they started laying their own people off, that would just add to the depth of the recession and the length of the recovery. So there's money in the package that's really intended to help stabilize the state and local governments and reduce the layoffs necessary in those areas. Next. The flow of resources here, this is a $787 billion package. About two-thirds of it is for expenditures, and a little bit more than a third is in tax cuts and credits. So the part that's in expenditures will flow through various funding pipelines and can be drawn down by eligible entities. The part that's tax cuts and credits is going to go directly to individuals and businesses who qualify. If they don't apply for the tax cuts and credits, they won't get the money. So for many of you who work on things like the Earned Income Tax Credit, this is an important thing to remember. If those who are eligible for these credits don't get it, the families in your community won't benefit from them. The economies in your community won't benefit from them. The vast majority of the flow goes through existing channels, things like the Department of Education Title I grant program or community service block grants, but there's also money that goes into some new programs, even if that's a smaller part of the total pie. Next, please. The Earn It and Keep It and Grow It, the EKG of the Act, There's an awful lot here around earn it, which only makes sense if you're talking about dealing with an economic dislocation like a recession. So a lot of money is going into jobs, a lot of money is going into training. There's also a fair amount that's going into keep-it things. There's some money out there, actually in associated bills more than the stimulus itself, around financial education. There's a lot of money going into energy efficiency that'll help save families and communities money. And there's also some going into grow it. And most of the money going into grow it is either going into home ownership issues or it's going into education. And then there are some cross-cutting things as well, things that really pull together or quilt together the various parts of the Earn It, Keep It, and Grow It package, like some of the tax credits and some of the community service volunteer opportunities. This is a general chart that comes right off of the Federal Recovery.gov website that shows basically how the funds are broken up. As I said, there's that very big piece for tax relief. That's the largest single topic in the budget. Also a very significant chunk for state and local fiscal relief that I discussed. Infrastructure is the third biggest piece of this, things like transportation, sewer systems, water systems, and the like. Protecting vulnerable people gets a fairly significant chunk. Healthcare and education also get large chunks. Energy gets a significant chunk. And then there's about $8 billion spread around a whole bunch of other topics. There are really 5 ways the funds are distributed. The first is from federal agencies through the formula programs to state agencies. So these are formulas built into the existing laws. So when Congress increased the amount of money available for under that formula, there's already a mechanism for distributing it to particular state agencies. The second is also through formula, but it flows through, usually through state agencies, to some sort of local entity, like a municipality or a workforce investment board. The third category here is really in discretionary, or what you might also call competitive grant programs. And this is typically where the federal agency, although sometimes the competition or the discretion at the state level, sets up a competition where people apply for funds in a particular category, in a particular program. The fourth one is through the tax credits or rebates to individuals and businesses I mentioned earlier. And the final piece, which we won't really talk about at all here today other than right now, is through bonds and loans that are available to businesses. So there are some programs here for direct financial assistance to businesses, but it's in the form of resources that ultimately the businesses have to pay back. So if you look at the difference between what comes by formula and what comes by grant, you can see that not all categories of funding are created equal. Health, it's 100% formula on one end of the spectrum, and economic and community development, it's 24% formula. So there's a big difference in how much is coming through these formulas and how much is coming in direct grants. But you also have to consider the size of the overall allocations in seeing how useful that is, and in how much flexibility there is on the back end, and whether or not a formula can actually be used the way a local community might want to use the funds. Next, please. So here you can see the difference in allocation for some of the same areas that I just highlighted in terms of how much they were getting through formula. And education, as you can see, far outstrips everybody else combined. Education's about 10% formula. Well, 10% of $77.3 billion is just about the same as the 26 in net amount that's going out in grants versus formula, as the 74% of economic and community development funds that are going out by formula. So you really need to look at both what's going out by formula and how much is available totally, see what might be out there in flexible money. Next, please. Just a real quick peek at things to come. We're really just getting into the fiscal year 2010 budget deliberations. The Obama administration has put forward their budget proposal now. It's about $3.6 trillion. That's a lot of money. About 1.2 trillion of that is in deficit spending, money that we're essentially borrowing from the future, much of it to get us through the needs in this tough economic time. There's about $630 billion in this that's being set aside as a reserve for healthcare reform. Something is going to happen in healthcare reform this year, with a change in the weight of folks of the various parties in Congress. It looks like a filibuster is going to be impossible on healthcare reform, and that's about the only thing that could have stopped it. Also, the budget resolution sets up a way of bypassing a filibuster. So there's almost certainly going to be some kind of a health reform bill this year. This is the time to weigh in on it. There's also an issue remaining of how program and formula regulations are friendly or not so friendly to rural needs and priorities. A lot of the formulas out there really do favor urban areas, and the process that you use to draw down funds in rural areas can be a lot more difficult. And so there's room to weigh in during the budget deliberations about trying to make sure that the formulas and the regulations that are written and the instruction Congress gives on writing regulations is friendly to rural needs and rural priorities. Next.
So I want to just pop in here and remind anybody, if you have any clarifying questions during these about 5-minute presentations on each one of the ideas we're going to put forward, RuFES ideas we're going to put forward in the stimulus package. And please, if you have clarifying questions, just type them in your question box. But after each major segment, we'll open the lines for a little bit of time. And we're going to go straight into the EKG, or the Earn It, Keep It, Grow It of the Recovery Act, focusing on earn it opportunities and programs. And we have two major things we're going to talk about here: workforce development as well as YouthBuild. And we're going to hear again from John right away, who's going to talk to us about workforce development funding in the Recovery Act. So John, back to you.
Sure thing. So what is the stimulus opportunity? This is really the first new money for workforce development since Ronald Reagan took office in 1980. If you look at how much has been allocated on a year-to-year basis and you adjust it for inflation, it has gone down in every funding cycle since 1980 until this year. So this is a very, very big thing. Next, please. There are really 4 different places that this can be used for RuFES purposes. It can be used for adult workers, helping the workers with getting the basic skills that they need to become employed in job search. It can be used for displaced workers. The law allows up to 2 years of funding for retraining. So displaced worker, someone who's been laid off, may actually be able to go out and get a 2-year degree in an area that upgrades their skills. There's money in here for workers who are entering the job market. The formula allows money for training, for coaching, for assisting workers in finding jobs. And finally, there's a massive amount of money in the bill for summer youth employment, more than there's ever been for this purpose in history. Next. Overall, there's about $3.9 billion that's being distributed for workforce development. 74% of that's formula, and the formula funds, though, actually are actually a lot more flexible than you might think. 85% of those formula dollars pass straight through the state, but straight through under a predefined formula to local workforce investment boards. And those local investment boards have a fair amount of discretion in terms of how they can use these funds if they want to get a little bit creative with it. 15% is reserved by the states for the state use. The state can either use this for system building activities like running the unemployment systems. They can use it for things like helping make sure that the online job search systems work, or they can pass it through in additional grants to the local workforce boards. Some of the money that's coming through the formula is population focused. It might going for things like adult education, youth summer employment, dislocated workers. Some of it's more focused on outcomes. For instance, training workers to clean up brownfields. Those would be basically polluted industrial sites. Training workers in the energy industries or in biotechnology. The local portion, as I said, comes through the workforce investment boards. Every part of America is covered by a workforce investment board. Your local, and those are basically local people making decisions on how this money will be used. And there's also a $750 million new competitive grant program. This is the most competitive grant money that's been available in workforce in as long as I can remember. $500 million of that's designated for energy and healthcare, but there's $250 million there that is extremely flexible. Can be used for training workers or helping workers in a variety of fields. Next. As I said, the workforce investment boards have really a wide degree of discretion in how they use formula funds. Many of them don't think they have a wide degree of discretion. Many of them are very staid in terms of the way that they allocate and use the funds, but there is a lot of flexibility here if they are brave enough and care to take it. Some of those workforce investment boards run their own programs. The money comes to them, they decide how they're going to spend it, and they basically hire the staff to do the services. Some of them work through re-granting, and so there can be an opportunity for other community agencies to compete for some of those funds in some areas. Some do a little bit of both. All of those youth funds, remember I said there's a massive amount of youth funding. All of that money has to be used this summer. So this is going to be a very big summer for youth employment. And the competitive program I mentioned, that $750 million, is still on the drawing board. The application details haven't yet been announced for that. Next. So if you want to get information about this, the Department of Labor has information on their website. And then there's a nonprofit group based here in D.C. called the Workforce Alliance. It's got just a tremendous amount of very useful information on their website as well.
Thank you, John. Now we're going to turn to Kim Finney, who's Director of Rural and Tribal Development at YouthBuild USA, to talk about all of the YouthBuild funding that is in the stimulus package. She's also going to tell us what it is YouthBuild does and how it can help your RuFES efforts. So, Kim, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Janet. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I just want to let you know I'm joined by my colleague, Helen Witcher. She's the Director of New Site Development for us here at YouthBuild USA. So Helen and I will be bouncing back and forth on the slides to try to get the most information to you in the shortest amount of time. So straight up, the most straightforward stimulus opportunity under YouthBuild is there's $50 million. It is to run YouthBuild programs, and that money is coming through the Department of Labor. Helen will speak to how that's being distributed in a few moments, but we also wanted to flag for you 3 other potential opportunities in case you are sitting in communities that are running or agencies that are already running YouthBuild programs, some things you should be aware of, or that you are just looking to serve this population of young people regardless of whether you're actually running the YouthBuild model or you're running a similar type program. So the first up is what John was just mentioning. Is we just wanted to highlight there is $1.2 billion available in WEA youth funds, and in particular the summer funding that is available. We are telling existing YouthBuild programs right now that they need to be acting on this immediately. They should be in conversation with their local WIPs. And Helen will come back to that funding in a moment again. The second additional opportunity that I wanted to highlight is that YouthBuild is trying to do a lot around green building and creating green career pathways for young people. So we're fielding a variety of calls, and there is still a lot for us to figure out about where the opportunities for young people sit within the stimulus package. But one of the key places that we know and that the programs in the field are working on is through the Weatherization Assistance Funds. So if you're running a YouthBuild program or thinking about running a YouthBuild program, the construction and training opportunities that are created there's a logical link between that and the young people and graduates being able to do weatherization activities. And so existing programs We are encouraging, and many of them are already in partnership or running through community action agencies. And so there's further basically job placement and training opportunities with that. The last piece to highlight is just simply that there are $510 million coming through formula grants directly to tribes through the Native American Housing Block Grant. And while obviously those are dollars focused primarily on affordable housing, the complexities that YouthBuild used to be a HUD program and is now a DOL program, we've had a couple of initial conversations with the folks at HUD, and there could be, with a solid strategy, there is some creativity, room for creativity with that money, that if there was tribes or interested tribal entities that wanted to try to put together put together the YouthBuild model or similar type activities that had young people focused on job training and affordable housing. Next. Thanks, Janet. Just quickly, in case you're not familiar, the YouthBuild model, it is a model for low-income, out-of-school young people that are ages 16 to 24. The program is centered where the young people spend 50% of their time in some sort of classroom-based instruction, whether they're pursuing a high school diploma, getting a GED, or looking at post-secondary opportunities, training opportunities. The other 50% of their time they spend on a job site building affordable housing. So it is combining education with concrete job training in a specific sector, which happens to be housing. The other wraparound pieces of the model that make it unique, it has a very strong leadership development and counseling component that helps not only link young people to the concept of community development and community service and be engaged in the community, but also builds those other soft and hard skills that puts them on a pathway to economic self-sufficiency. Next, Janet. Thanks.
Okay, good afternoon. This is Helen Witcher. So I just wanted to talk briefly about how this money is being distributed. And YouthBuild is through the Department of Labor, the set of funding that comes from them that is strictly for YouthBuild to run programs is the only set of money out there for YouthBuild that's purely, and all operational, even though there are plenty of ways to run a YouthBuild program. So applications most recently went into the Department of Labor for this money in January, and the regular appropriation that we receive will be awarded at the end of June. The stimulus money, which is the additional $50 million, has gone to DOL, but as yet they have not given us instruction about how they're going to distribute those funds. The two really primary options seem that they will either continue to take applicants off the list of those that applied in January, or they certainly could open up another competition, or there could be some other idea that they are thinking about that we are unaware of. But we are told that they will be letting us know shortly how it is that they're going to distribute that stimulus funding.
When you said take applicants off the list, you mean choose applicants from the list?
Right, from the list that
they're not taking them off the list, they're choosing them from that list.
Right, that they received in January.
All right, good. I didn't want to scare anyone on the call.
It's just a bit of a lottery, that's all.
Okay.
John had mentioned the WI Youth Fund, so certainly folks that are interested in starting YouthBuild programs or that have YouthBuild programs already, connecting with the local youth council and the local workforce development board and finding out how they are operating and working with those WIA funds is a good thing to do. Now, it's my understanding that while this money does need to be spent on youth this summer, that if you're in an area that is working creatively, that there is some money that could be used as follow-up for out-of-school summer youth. So that money could be very easily translated into taking some of these summer youth that are on the older end of the age range, that are out of school, and continuing to work with them into the year in a YouthBuild capacity. The weatherization funds, certainly this is an area where programs and potential programs can apply for funds and can access these funds. probably through a community action organization is an easier way to do that, and take care of their construction component of the program that way. And I think Kim also then had spoken to the model, the travel funds. The next slide, please. So beginning a YouthBuild program is something that is very different for every community. We have about 226 programs nationally, and not all of them are funded with strict Department of Labor funds. So the model is a little bit different for every community. You're going to have a model that answers the need in your individual community, and it's going to be different based on the partnerships and the collaborations and the way that you design the program. But certainly all of these models can benefit from these funds that are here, plus a mix of other funds in the community. Folks that want to begin a YouthBuild program need to be thinking about the way that they would put together these collaborations and these partnerships. You can go to the YouthBuild.org website, and there is a whole sequence of information about beginning a program, and it will take you to some extent step by step. YouthBuild USA, as the intermediary, provides a lot of technical assistance around that, so folks can go to youthbuild.org for any additional questions that they've got around starting a program and how some of these monies might fit in and play a role. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize for this one slide. We've had a little bit of a format glitch with PowerPoint today, so what can I say? This happens. We're running a little bit over, but we could take a couple questions. If anyone has a specific question now and wants to raise their hand. I noticed that Beverly Cooper, you've had your hand up for a while. Is there anything that you want to say to us? I'm not sure we can get to her at this point. Nope, I'm not hearing anything. So if you've got a question, please type it on in. And in the meantime, let's move on to our Keep It opportunities. And here we're going to talk about sort of a non-stimulus but immediate opportunity in relation to financial education for students. And John's going to handle that. And then we'll turn to Dwayne Yoder, who's going to talk to us about all of the amazing resources available for energy efficiency and weatherization.
Okay,
John, take it away.
Thank you, Janet. I'm going to be very quick about this. This is really not actually a Stimulus Act opportunity, but it's something that passed very recently with very quick timelines on it. It's a 2009-2010 grant round for the Excellence in Economic Education Act. It makes grants for financial education programs, for curriculum, and for research for financial education focused on K-12 students. Next slide, please. It really has two basic funding pools, one for school-based financial education programs. And the eligible activities there include teacher training programs, school-based student activities, replication of best practices, and distribution of curriculum and teaching materials to financial education programs. The other piece here is education research, a focus on K-12 students, doing things like evaluating the impact of economic and financial literacy education, and also then doing general overall research on economic and financial literacy. Next, please. The grants are going out through the Council for Economic Education. They're the prime grantee, and these are actually sub-grants of their grant from the federal government. The grant size available depends on the category you apply under, and you can see the ranges that are available for the different categories here. There's about $1.1 million available overall here. This is a really good opportunity for those of you who are already working in financial education to potentially supplement your efforts or take on a little bit more than you're already doing. Next slide, please. The qualifications here, there must be a public school involved, either as a partner or as an applicant if it's a non-research grant. If it's a research grant, it might go to a university or something and does not necessarily have to have a specific public school partner. Other organizations, you don't have to be a school to apply. You can be a local nonprofit organization, but you do have to have a public school involved if you're not if it's not a school applying. The applications generally have to be made on their online system. There is an exception, but it's a tough one. The deadline is June 2nd if it's a non-research grant, or September 15th if it's a research grant. And the only real drawback here is that the cap on funds for administration and indirect costs combined is 5%.
Welcome to GoToWebinar. Web events may be...
Keep going.
Yep. Next. Next slide, please.
Yep.
Yep. And then basically, if you're looking for information on this, you would go to the basically directly to the Council on Economic Education website, and at the link that will be provided in the materials that are being sent to you, and that's up on the screen now.
Terrific. Thanks, John. So now we'll turn to our good friend and RuFES action hero, Dwayne Yoder, out in Garrett County in western Maryland. And Dwayne is going to talk to us about the different opportunities related to energy efficiency and weatherization programs. These are both things that help rural families keep it, and that means keep more of what they're earning. But it does actually relate to grow it and earn it as well, and Dwayne will explain that. So Dwayne, it's your turn. Dwayne? Do we have Dwayne, Elsa?
Yep, Dwayne's on.
I see that he's on. Hello, Dwayne. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to move on to the next presentation, and it may be Dwayne stepped away from his phone because we see him as on and in full voice. So I'm just going to move on to the next opportunity here. And that's going to be K-12 education, which is the earn it portion of the agenda. So in this case, we're going to be hearing from Rachel Tompkins from the Rural School and Community Trust, although she's retiring from that position, I think, in June. Is that true, Rachel?
1st of July.
1st of July. Well, close enough. So, Rachel, why don't you carry us forward?
Okay. Education, as John said, got a big slug of money. The two things I'm going to talk about, it's gone out in several different ways, but the two things I'm going to talk about today are Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and the State Stabilization Fund. Let me do the State Stabilization Fund first. This is a big chunk of money that's gone basically to help the states not have to lay off anybody. And what's happened in a lot of states around education, and every state's done this a little bit differently, but basically the Stabilization Fund in most states isn't really adding a lot of additional funds to what your schools and school districts have to spend. It's going to fill in the holes in the state budget from state and local funds that have been required because of reduction in state tax revenues. But there have been funds distributed to schools and colleges, and there are a couple funds I'm going to talk about in a minute called the Race to the Top and the Innovation Fund that are part of the Stabilization Fund, that are basically discretionary funds for the Secretary of Education to distribute, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act will provide new money to school districts. It's going out through the existing formula, and that means, and because of the way it's going out, there will be additional funds to spend on new programs. So now the next slide, how can it be used for RuFES purposes? In many ways, I would suggest to you that the ways in which this can be used in schools that are Title I eligible, have lots of poor kids, are limited only by your imagination and creativity. I heard 2 or 3 people, in fact, John was talking about this in the workforce programs with all the youth available, and Kim talked about it in YouthBuild. I think there's some really interesting opportunities for schools to pursue with others in the community to bring together some of these kinds of programs that will really create some kind of holistic and comprehensive programs in your community. Now, there are a lot of ways these funds can be used, and I'm only going to mention 4. And I'm speaking now specifically about Title I funds. High school reform. Most Title I money now goes to elementary schools. So if you're going to do something new with Title I money, doing something in high school is a way to do it and clearly be doing new things. And so dropout prevention, turning around low-performing schools, these are the kinds of things that really require community involvement from our standpoint, that you can't really do high school retention or turning around low-performing schools without involving the community in it. So those of you who are not in schools but are in community organizations might well want to be talking to the schools about the ways in which you can be involved in working with them in these areas. Out-of-school learning is also mentioned in the guidance, and this is a real opportunity for communities to expand after-school weekend and summertime learning opportunities. Expanded learning, extended day, this kind of language will get used, but basically what the Secretary of Education and others are very interested in is expanding the amount of time that students spend learning, but not necessarily in school time, out of school time. And they've been very clear that they're interested in art and music and physical education and photography and cultural activities and doing all the kinds of things that you maybe don't have time to do during the school day. This is another really good opportunity, I think, for communities and schools to collaborate. Expanded early childhood programs. This administration is going to make a huge push in early childhood programs. This is another area where if your Title I money has mostly been spent K through 6 or K through 4, this is an opportunity to back up and spend on early childhood programs. Also, I think if you're creative, you can figure out ways to use Title I money to improve high school and college connections. If you're doing high school programs, and not only focused on dropout prevention and turning around really low-performing schools, but I think there are ways that if you're creative and thoughtful, you can figure out how to use this on connecting high schools and community colleges, maybe linking up with some of the workforce stuff. I think there will be opportunities there. Okay, next slide. The State Stabilization Fund is basically up to the governor and the legislature to decide how it's going to be spent. It is, with the exception of the part that the secretary is going to spend. The race to the top and the innovation funds are competitive grant programs. There's $5 billion total in these two funds. That's a huge hunk of change. Requests for proposals will be out soon. You can find all that on the Department of Education website, which is in a slide in a minute. Title I ESEA is distributed by formula to districts. It can't supplant state and local dollars, has to be spent on new programs. And remember, you have a 2-year window to spend these dollars. So making a 2-year plan, thinking about what you want to do this year, what you want to do next year is probably an important way to think about it. Now, this formula is biased against rural districts. And you're going to be hearing a lot more from us at the Rural School and Community Trust about changing that formula as Title I of the ESEA, which is also referred to as the No Child Left Behind Act. That's how you may know it, although I think going forward it's going to get a new name. But it's the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It will be reauthorized probably next spring, so you'll be hearing a lot more about that as we go forward. Next. Qualifications and deadlines. I think I've covered some of this. Competitive. So Title I ESEA, the only thing I'd add to what's on the slide here is just to reinforce the notion that this is a local planning process. This is a place where if you haven't been involved in working with your school district on how these funds are spent, you need to get in there, find out about it, get involved, because there are real opportunities to do some creative things. Next slide. Here are resources. The Department of Education website is very transparent. It's got so much information on it that it's hard to know how to deal with it. Learning Point Associates is one of the comprehensive education laboratories, and they have been doing a pretty good job of updating things as they come out and also talking about state-specific information. So it may be more helpful if what you're trying to do is figure out what the heck your state is doing. On early childhood education, the National Association of Education of Young Children has a good website. And if you're interested in the Title I fairness issues, we have stuff on our website now, and it will be a good place to find additional information. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Dwayne to see if he can. Dwayne apparently is on and tried to talk, but we didn't hear him. Dwayne, could you try to say hello?
Am I?
You're there.
Hey,
Dwayne,
well, I had my whole
happy to
speech
have you.
given already.
Thank you, Rachel. We will come back to that, if that's okay. And we're now going to hear from Dwayne.
Well, Janet, thank you. I don't know what happened. There are a lot of people here who would like to put me on mute, but you were successful somehow. Again, thank you very much. The Weatherization is, one of the big initiatives in the stimulus package, and I think the significant thing about that is that we're not just talking about a 2-year program. This is a priority, and the plan, as I understand it, coming out of the administration, is for this to continue over the next, 8 to 10 years in terms of budget commitment. So the opportunity is something that will last. It's pretty large. For those of you who haven't been directly involved with weatherization, I mean, its primary purpose is to improve the energy efficiency of homes of low-income persons, and it does that by going in and doing an audit of the house and then making material application or technology application to the home, and it is usually done directly by a local contractors or crews that a nonprofit might hire directly. The national funding, as you can see here on the slide, over the next couple years is pretty significant, ending up at about $10.5 billion by 2011. And this is something that will continue. The plan at this point, in terms of the Obama administration, is to weatherize 1 million homes a year over the next 9 years. So this is a large increase. Next slide, please. Janet mentioned that weatherization actually can be looked at in a couple different ways in terms of the RuFES keep it, earn it, and grow it. Obviously, keeping it is a primary goal, a priority in terms of what weatherization is about. The average actual dollar savings, and this is documented, this is from the result of some studies that have been done over time, is between $400 and $500 a year. Now, there are a lot of variables that go into, how much energy a home saves, but it is significant, and over the course of the life of, the home, of the weatherization materials that are applied, the return on this is multiple. You save a lot of money compared to what goes into this. I mentioned here that part of the earning it relates back to the jobs that are being created, and it was mentioned, I think, a couple times by the YouthBuild presentation. Kim, I think, noted this, that there will be jobs that are created as a result of this expansion. And it's anticipated, right now, there are probably about, it's anticipated that there will be 11,000 to 30,000 new jobs that come out of the expansion. And and in many cases, it's connected directly to some of the workforce development and some of the Workforce Investment Board work that's being done. I know that in our case in Western Maryland, it's also related, a lot of the TANF money that is coming through the states is tied into training people to assume these jobs with the local providers. In Garrett County, Maryland, what we're doing, in addition to, and what I tied into the Grow It here, is that we're going, because of the rapid ramp-up and the expansion is happening so fast and the money needing to be spent quickly, we're going to rely heavily on local contractors to actually do some of the application of the materials. And we're working with them to do expansions, both in terms of our micro-lending strategy and mostly expansion of businesses. So that is a part of the Grow It strategy that would be in place. Next slide, please. The money, the weatherization is, the grantee are the states. The states receive all the money, and then distribute it based on, what their own policy is. Maryland, I can speak to Maryland mainly. I'm not really familiar with all the states, but they do. Maryland distributes the money via a formula. It's population-based. So many of the rural communities are kind of left out as a result of this. But the real experience in Maryland is that the urban areas, especially the suburban counties, have a difficult time performing or producing, and at the end of the day, this money is redirected, reprogrammed, and rural communities really do quite well by the end of the day. But the grants are made to the states, and they establish the procedure for allocating funds to local organizations. As you can see here, there are about 900 providers. Most of them are community action agencies, but not all. Many states have an open process that allow for other groups to come in, and in Maryland, it's a real mix of both local government, nonprofits, and community action agencies. Next slide. In terms of running a program, taking advantage of a program, if you're actually wanting to get money to operate a weatherization program, here are the elements that are really key. One is the intake and outreach. I should have mentioned earlier that one of the changes that was made with the expansion money is an increase in the income eligibility, going from 150% of poverty to 200% of poverty. So there's a larger market out there. So having a relationship with, for instance, groups like the energy assistance providers is really important, and the pipeline of applications needs to be ready and prepared to move forward. Another major issue is the technology. It goes into the energy auditing of candidate homes and the quality control inspections. We use both blower door technology and thermal heat cameras as a way of determining needs in the home as to what the work is that needs to be done, and then checking on the quality of work that is completed. Obviously, you need the ability to produce. In our case, we didn't think we could hire enough people and train them quickly enough to really get up to speed, so we're relying on contractors, but we'll be doing all the quality control work and all the initial auditing for those contractors. A lot of states are having a lot of problems figuring out how they're going to train all the people that they need to have in the field now in order to get this work done. And that's becoming a major issue, I think, around the country. We're working a system through our community colleges where we're going to do that, but it is a pretty intense kind of effort at this stage. The management, it does help if you have experience, if you have a track record in terms of running weatherization, and if you have your equipment, your vehicles, and your technology in place. Next slide. My relationship in terms of where I went for information is essentially direct. I have been able to talk directly to individuals, and so I wasn't really able to give you suggestions or recommendations on this. But I do, I do think that the start is either if you're just wanting to partner, is your local, whoever's your local provider, or your state agency. The state agency in Maryland, it's the housing office, housing community development office, but again, it varies from state to state. And but that would be the beginning point. There are a lot of resources on the various web pages that deal with the stimulus package in terms of weatherization, but at this point, the money is being put on the street. We just signed our contracts about 2 weeks ago, and in Maryland, I know the anticipation is that the work is to begin, in May, really, and we're geared up and ready to start. And I think there's a real push across the country to try to get this money out on the street as quickly as possible. Let's see. I think I'll leave it at that and then respond to questions.
Okay. So we've heard now from since I last asked for questions, from John about financial education for students, from Dwayne on energy efficiency and weatherization, and from Rachel Tompkins on different education programs. Does anybody have any questions about any of these right now that you want to pose? You can either type them to me or raise your hand. I do have a hand raised here from Dale Raleigh, although that may have been to get a question to get an audio pin, and I think that is the case. So does anybody else have a question? You can raise your hand or you can type a question in. And absent that, I am going to turn it over now. We have two more things we want to focus on, and they're both what we would call pan earn it, keep it, and grow it. They're opportunities that you can use to really help fuel and give energy to your entire RuFES approach, helping rural families earn it, keep it, and grow it by helping you with your programs, using volunteers to help you with your programs, or by using a whole range of tax credits that have been enhanced or added to really bring people in the door and route them to other RuFES services. So we'll start first with the Serve America Act, and I'm going to turn this over now to my colleague Renee Bryce-Laporte at Aspen CSG. Renee.
Thank you, Janet. Pleasure here to be here and to join all of these RuFES action heroes and a bona fide guru. I want to talk a little bit about the Serve America Act, which is actually the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act, which just passed there in April. It reauthorizes the AmeriCorps program that was established in 1993. All of these programs are going to be administered by the Corporation for National Service, often referred to as CNS. And basically what is intended here is to really capitalize on some of what President Obama talked about during his campaign about increasing national service. And it really expands the opportunities for volunteerism across all age groups, a number of them with youth, but really across all age groups. The main thing that it does in terms of the VISTA program in particular is it increases the number of AmeriCorps volunteers annually from 75,000 that we have annually now up to 250,000 by the year 2017. Now, while that is the number one thing that this act does, there are a lot of other important measures. Next slide, please. Okay, one of these important programs, it establishes a semester of service. High schoolers who want to be involved in public service and want to spend some time in service learning, it establishes that these high schoolers can receive high school credit for that service. There's also a program called Summer of Service that provides funding for young people, 6th grade through 12th grade, who want to volunteer within their community. So there's funding for that. When I said across all age groups, we really are digging pretty deep. Then there is the Action Act. Many of you who've had VISTAs working for you realize that they work for a very small stipend. And the reward for them, in addition to the learning that they get and the pride in service to their communities, is that they also get an education award at the end of their service, money that goes towards paying their education. Well, this act, the Serve America Act, provides money so that they can start to meet the increased costs that are coming in with education. In 2010, it'll be $5,350, and then each year it is designed to increase along with the increase in allocations with the Pell Grant, so it will index towards the Pell Grant increases. Next slide, please. Now, the Encore Service Act, it's intended to, again, going across age groups, reach into the great experience that we have amongst our seniors and near seniors and trying to capitalize on that. And so if those seniors want to go to school, if those seniors would like a stipend, and, of course, if those seniors just want to contribute to their community, there is money provided for that within the Serve America Act. Next slide, please. Okay, one of the key things that we have in the Act, the Social Innovation Fund, sometimes referred to as Community Solutions Fund, it offers money to expand proven initiatives and really looks to serve, to help folks serve needs that aren't really met by existing funding sources. There is explicit language in the bill talking about how they're looking to help fund communities where foundations aren't so plentiful, that outside money isn't so plentiful, so that if you have interesting, innovative ideas, that this fund will provide money for that. Currently, the suggested appropriation is $50 million, and we're hoping that that holds. There's also the Volunteer Generation Fund, money going to states and nonprofits looking to help them staff up with volunteers, and a capacity building fund looking to help organizations build up their capacity building so that they can actually deliver services. And we all know that that kind of money is really not easy to get. So the Social Innovation Fund, I think, is a really key opportunity within this Serve America Act. Next slide, please.
Just to mention one thing, for those of you on the phone, or on the webinar, I should say, who know Miriam Shark, who is the NEKC Foundation staffer, who really is, I think she calls herself the foster mother of RuFES. She is very, very big on this Community Solutions Fund, and we don't really know enough about it yet to sort of figure out how this money is going to go out, but she's, I think, very hopeful about the possibility for creativity for rural communities maybe trying to access or use this fund for RuFES purposes. So this is really one of those stay tuned moments, because we don't know enough yet to tell you how to get any of it, but we think you're going to be able possibly to be creative with it, so we'll try to keep you in touch with that. Okay, Renee, back to you.
Sure. Now, how can this be used for RuFES purposes? Again, a lot of seniors, they really are an untapped, they represent an untapped wealth of experience. There are a lot of skills that are out there that seniors have that aren't properly used by communities to help themselves improve. And so that's what this is all about. Those of you who have had VISTAs in your program, though they certainly require some guidance, we all know how they can really provide a fresh look and fresh energy for programs. I certainly have seen that in the own work that I've done, where they just cause you to look at old solutions and old problems in new ways and bring new exciting ideas to it. And again, with that Social Innovation Fund, the Community Solutions Fund, these are really flexible resources. It can be used as anti-poverty money. It can be used for education. It can be used to fight crime. There really are a lot of ways that you can use the Social Innovation Fund. It's just really reaching into your community, finding out the need, and expressing an innovative idea in a good way. Volunteers really are going to be a wonderful addition for you. I mean, they're a cash equivalent in many ways. Staffers cost money, and here you have a lot of additional staffing that's going to be provided to you for very little cost, only really administrative costs. Next slide, please. Oops. Okay. Now, when Janet was saying that we don't know enough yet, the bill's been authorized for these new programs, but we don't have the appropriation yet. That will come later in the year. Organizations are going to be able to apply for the funds directly through the Corporation for National and Community Service, CNS, and at this point, all the regulations haven't been decided yet, but they will be coming down the pike very shortly. So as time goes by, we will know more about this. Next slide, please. Okay, as I said, that legislation was just passed. When you're looking for information, you can go to this slide here. Says nationalservice.gov. That is the website for CNS. They have a button right there at the top of the page. It says for organizations. If you click on that button, it provides you information on how to apply for their programs. And in fact, if you go there now, you will see other programs there for which you can apply. And so it's a useful site to keep on your bookmarks. Okay, I've listed here a few resources for you. I listed Senator Chris Dodd's website, he being one of the leaders of the advocacy for this bill in the Senate, dodd.senate.gov. You can go back to his site. He has been putting up information about that program pretty continuously. You can also go to Congressman George Miller's site, georgemiller.house.gov. He ran the committee that passed the legislation in the House. They even have a link to a YouTube clip there. You can go to Carolyn McCarthy's site in the House, as she was the original sponsor there. So there are a number of legislators who have information about the Serve America Act. America Forward is an organization that's a collaborative of nonprofits across the country, covering all 50 states, about 70, 75 organizations. And they have a website with good information on the Serve America Act as well. And again, I have listed here nationalservice.gov, and you should maintain watch on that. And we certainly will make sure that once it's time to really apply for funds, that we will let you, as our RuFES family, know about the opportunities for funding.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Janet.
We're going to move on to looking at all the tax credits that are available in this package, the stimulus package and its surrounding federal initiatives. We do have one question, and as we're transferring over to Jason, I just want to see if John has anything else to say about this. Our good friend Kerry Gladstone up in New Hampshire said, you know, when John talked earlier, he talked about the detail about $81 billion for protecting the vulnerable. Can you go into more detail about what it covers beyond what you've already discussed? Now, I'm assuming some of that is going to be in the tax credits that Jason talks about, but can you, John, talk about anything else that you would think would be involved in the protecting the vulnerable in the circle chart or the bubble chart you had?
Well, Carrie, I can try. That bubble chart was prepared by the federal government, and it doesn't correspond in a really easy to understand way to allocations to specific programs. But that includes, for instance, when they talk about protecting the vulnerable, they're talking about some of the programs that are out there that are focused on folks like people who've been laid off and some of the TANF dollars that are flowing through the bill. Jason may have some ideas about this as well. Jason, some thoughts?
My guess that might also include nutrition programs.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'd have to go back and look at that chart again to really double check on that.
Yeah,
and it may well also include the child tax credits that I'm going to discuss here briefly.
Yeah, one of the things they don't do is footnote what's in those totals. So we can only really guess at how they came up with those particular numbers, but they do add up to the total amount in the bill.
Okay. Then let's move in then to make sure that we get all of this content pushed out, as they say, and talk about, there are really an amazing number of tax credits. Some of them are old with new twists, and some of them are a little bit new in the bill. And as you all know, the RuFES agenda is in many ways energized and motivated by helping low-income families make sure they take advantage of all the tax credits, that they take advantage of all the tax credits they can in order to help make ends meet. And so we've asked Jason Gray, a frequent colleague and who is actually a stimulus package guru. If you want to know where some numbers are buried, we just suggest you contact Jason directly and leave us out of the loop. Just go straight to him because he's very good at that. But Jason, would you carry us through the tax credits for all here?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. As Janet said, the tax credit threads here are extensive. As John presented very early on in the presentation, tax credits and tax cuts make up about 35% of the entire stimulus package. The stimulus package offers many ways for credit opportunities for low-income working families. Each tax credit helps improve social justice outcomes in several important ways. One, it puts more money in the hands of low-income families, helps them make ends meet and to get ahead. Secondly, and equally important, is that it boosts the sales receipts of local businesses and sales tax revenues where collected. That helps maintain community services. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I'm just going to, in the short period of time we have, just hit at some of the really the biggest ones with the biggest implications. First off, let's talk about the Making Work Pay tax credit. Nationally, this is a $116 billion program. The refundable tax credit in 2009 and 2010 only, up to $400 for working individuals, and up to $800 for married taxpayers filing joint returns. For people receiving a paycheck who are subject to withholding, the credit will typically be handled by employers. However, if the taxpayers do not have taxes withheld or are self-employed, they may also make the credit. Now, the $116 billion is such a big number. I mean, in the past 6-7 months, we've been talking billions of dollars and trillions of dollars. So what does this look like at the state level? The state of Wisconsin's Revenue Department has been doing some estimating for the state of Wisconsin, and I'll just pass on some of their numbers, is that for 2 years, they estimate that the Making Work Pay tax credit will have $2.3 billion of savings for people in the state of Wisconsin. Next, please. Okay, let's shift to the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is a program known to many of you. EITC will have a temporary increase in 09 and 10. I think there are some efforts to maybe look at increasing or keeping that in the 09 budget and maybe making it permanent. The maximum annual EITC for in the new category is $5,657. This is for individuals who have 3 or more qualifying children. There's also been some relaxation in the standards for married couples or claiming the marriage penalty for the income thresholds for married filers. These changes apply for 09 and 2010 tax years. So it's something to start working on as those of you who are running Vita sites begin to gear up for the 09 tax season next year. This is a refundable credit. You've got to apply for it. Taxpayers can file amended returns claiming credits for up to 3 years of time if they qualified and neglected to claim in those years. EITC is critically important for rural households. The Carsey Institute estimates that 39% of rural families with children are eligible for EITC. It's going to have an average claim of around $2,600. So this is a significant program. The state of Wisconsin estimates that for the 2 years, it's going to have $104 million of additional resources, tax savings coming into the state of Wisconsin. Next, please. The child tax credit is another significant piece of the package. Nationally, it is a $14.8 billion program. Additional in that more families qualify, and the families that do qualify will have a larger credit. Estimated that 909,000 rural children will be eligible because of this increase in the eligibility qualifications. This will have an implication of about $377 billion that'll come to the rural households, according to analysis from the fine people at the Carsey Institute. Again, this is a refundable credit. You've got to apply for it. However, the other nice thing about this, though, is that taxpayers may receive the refunds even when they do not owe any taxes, but only if they file. Okay, next, please. There's a number of programs for laid-off workers, critical programs. There's tax credit for insurance premiums paid for participants in the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. This program assists workers who lost jobs due to plant closings or businesses shutting down and relocating out of country. I want to skip the tax exemption, come back to that in a minute, and just go straight to the COBRA health insurance. This is a very useful resource for folks who have been laid off from companies that provide subsidies for employees who involuntarily lose their jobs. The subsidy is 65% of COBRA continuation premiums for themselves or their families for up to 9 months. This is going to provide additional health insurance to hopefully get us over the worst part of the recession. Now, the tax exemption for unemployment benefits is also it's a small program, but it can have a big impact. And what it's doing is that it is for the first $2,400 of unemployment benefits received in 2009 is going to be tax-free. This applies only for 2009. My guess is that if unemployment figures do not begin to bounce up a little bit or bounce down a little bit by the first of the year, we may well see an extension for this in 2010. Next slide, please. Now, there's a whole range of other tax credits in the stimulus package, particularly around energy assistance, small business measures. But the two that I want to point out here is that there's a credit for sales tax deduction for vehicle purchases. For purchases after February 17th, 2009, sales tax credit is available up to the tax up to $49,500 for the purchase of an eligible motor vehicle. And I think eligible here is that we're looking at an American-made car that gets pretty good gas mileage. The second piece is the energy incentives for individuals and businesses. Here we have a tax credit that covers the cost of installing energy-efficient windows, doors, heating, and cooling equipment. The credit maximum here is $1,500. This is a $1,000 increase over the current provision. So I know for myself, I can see daylight in the gaps in my front door. So I'm thinking, okay, this is my tax credit for my new front door. Another important tax credit is the first-time homebuyer tax credit. Tax credits for homes purchased in 2008 or 2009. For 2008 purchases, it is valued up to $7,500. And for 2009 purchases, it increases up to $8,000. This is a very, very handy resource. Next, please. Okay, these credits are coming out of federal dollars. If they're not claimed, the money is left on the table, and local families and communities lose out. It's the exact dilemma we face with the earned income tax credit. So we've got to ramp up the knowledge in the communities and the outreach efforts to see that eligible individuals are really taking full advantage of these programs. Easy, quick, and sometimes dramatic wins for community organizations, helping people learn about and file and claim these credits by supporting and providing publicity, free tax filing assistance through VITA sites, and other innovative rural outreach. Next, please. Okay, the IRS page has a lot of detail on this and considerably more of some of the other tax credits, which we don't have time to cover here. You can see this up on the screen right here, irs.gov, the newsroom. The IRS also has a pretty good site on that you can link to from the portal or the federal recovery site. That would be www.recovery.gov, and you can go to any of the federal agency recovery pages from there, which I found to be extraordinarily useful. While there's growing concern about how quickly the feds are getting money out the door, I must say I am truly impressed with the level of transparency about how they are tracking this. It's probably causing heartburn out in the communities and then state agencies over tracking it, but it's been impressive to see. The recent Carsey Institute policy briefs have focused on a great deal of this. A very good one on the child tax credit, for which you can see the link. The Making Work Pay tax credit, another piece on the EITC. So this is a very useful resource. Next, please.
I think that's it for you.
I think that's it.
But thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we've got another question, and then I want to go back to Carrie's original question. We have a question on and Dwayne, I think this is for you. Will weatherization funds be available for public buildings and offices and other businesses, or is it entirely residential?
The Weatherization Assistance Program is entirely residential at this point. There is some other money out there under the Energy Conservation Block Grant, but
yes.
the Weatherization Program is for residential work.
Yes, that's correct. And there's also some, this is Jason, there's also some resources, I think some educational, through the Department of Education or Department of Energy now, I can't remember precisely where, for energy efficiency rehabs for schools. So that's a resource. I will also add that in USDA, the Community Facilities Program, which is both a grant program and a loan program, which is a very flexible program that goes for building public facilities, firehouse, community center. That is also a flexible source to deploy for energy efficiency purposes.
So, I mean, that just goes to show, we said we're not telling you every opportunity that's available. We were just trying to highlight some. So if you have more extensive questions like that, obviously people like Dwayne and Jason know where the weatherization money is hidden. And I think, obviously, some of that YouthBuild money can be used for that, too. Whether it can be used specifically for only for residential or not, I don't know. Kim has had to get off the call at this point. We have, I have, both Rachel and John had more to say in response to Carrie's earlier question about the vulnerable, what's in that vulnerable box. Rachel, what were you going to mention about that?
Well, I think some of it, I'm no expert on this, but I do believe some of that money went to supplement Medicaid, and that may have been included in the state stabilization funds, but maybe it's in the vulnerable categories. I know there's money going out to supplement Medicaid expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's been more than $25 billion obligated already for Medicaid. I'm not sure if that's in the vulnerable category or the health category.
Yeah. That's what I was. Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure about. One other thing on weather. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Rachel.
One other thing on the weatherization. You know, we've been working with some high schools where students are in a variety of different science classes are partnering with rural electric cooperatives and others to do energy audits. So the energy audits can get done that you need to do before you do weatherization stuff. There may be some, you know, we could provide some information to people if they're interested in those programs.
There's your training answer, Dwayne, right there.
Good idea.
Yeah, and I would just add that there's overall between the workforce, the youth elements, and the energy efficiency flows, there's incredible synergy that can be fed off of each other. I mean, Dwayne was commenting about the challenge of getting skilled workers to do the rehabs, weatherization rehabs, and there's workforce dollars there to address that. It's how do we make these work together to be greater than the sum of their parts.
Mm-hmm.
In the vulnerable piece here, there is a significant chunk for child support enforcement. There's a significant chunk, very big chunk, billions for child care and development block grants. There's money available to help for emergency needs around state TANF programs. There are additional money for children and family services. There's additional money for being paid to the states for foster care and adoption assistance. There's additional money for aging services programs. I mean, and that's just those, you know, and that's just going down the list of what some of the places where they've already got some money on the streets that I just picked up off of the HHS website. There are just so many pieces of this.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so if there's something in particular you're interested in, a particular topic, a search on the relevant federal website or on a topical website, if there's an industry group working on that issue, it may connect you to that information.
So speaking of which, we are now inching towards 3:30, which is the end of the webinar. And I want to thank you all for joining, and I really want to thank and encourage you to stay in touch with some of the presenters we've had today, which includes John and Renee of our own staff, but also Kim Finney and Helen from YouthBuild, Dwayne Yoder from Garrett County Community Action, Rachel Tompkins of the Rural School and Community Trust, and Jason Gray, consultant extraordinaire. These are people who really follow this stuff, and part of the reason we do these webinars is so that you have access to folks who are really doing it, because we know you're all doing it yourself. In fact, I know a lot of the folks I've seen who's been on the call, and I know a lot of you are networks where you live. And so please use this network to help yours. You're going to get after, probably not today, but in a few days, a copy, an email that will give you a link to this entire PowerPoint. You're going to get a handout on just the tax credits. Other useful resources that have been mentioned during the call, you'll get a list of all of them and how you can get to them. You will also get a multi-page handout on a whole, I don't know, Renee on our staff put together a whole list of different websites that are topical, statewide, and also national nonprofits that are actually tracking the stuff that you can go to. And so we're going to send all of that to you, and we want to thank the resource people who've been on the call. We want to thank you for joining us. And one final thing I want to say is you may have said to yourself during this webinar, they could do a whole webinar just on, for example, the weatherization stuff, and that would have been good. If you have an idea for how we can have a more targeted one, or one that goes into more depth on something that's really specific, let us know, and we will organize it. We can also organize tailored webinars for your network. So let us know, and we'll do our best. And with that, I will say thank you to all presenters, and bye-bye till next time.